This Notebook LM video explores one of the most profound global shifts in spirituality: the rise of people who identify as having no formal religious affiliation. From Europe to Latin America, millions are saying yes to personal faith but no to organized religion. Surveys reveal this group's diversity, and those who simply choose nothing in particular.
All right, welcome. Today, we're going to map out one of the biggest, yet most quietly transformative shifts happening in our world. It's a huge deal.
Now, this isn't a story you're going to see splashed across the headlines or popping up in political debates. Nope. This is more of a quiet revolution, something that's been unfolding in surveys and census data from more than 100 countries. And it shows this really profound change in how we, as a species, relate to one of our oldest institutions.
And it's not what you might think. This isn't a story about one religion winning and another one losing. Not at all. It's about the rise of something completely different, a group that's totally reshaping the spiritual landscape all over the globe.
So, what's going on here? Are we heading towards a world without religion? Well, when you actually dig into the data, the picture is way more complicated, and honestly, a lot more fascinating than that.
Okay, so let's just start with a simple question. If you had to guess, what's the fastest growing religious group in many parts of the world? Any ideas? The answer, well, it's probably going to surprise you. It's the people who, when asked about their religion, just say none. And listen, this is not some small fringe movement. By 2020, data from the World Values Survey showed that more than a quarter of the entire global population is religiously unaffiliated. I mean, think about that. That is a massive group of people.
Okay, but this is where it gets really interesting. Who are these so-called nuns? The name itself is kind of misleading. It's not some club you join, and it definitely doesn't mean everyone in this group is an atheist.
You see, the term nuns actually comes from how surveys are designed. When a pollster asks, "What's your religion?" the nuns are just the folks who check the box for atheist, agnostic, or, and this is the biggest category by far, nothing in particular.
And if we break that down, the picture gets even clearer. Let's take the US for example. Data from Pew Research shows only about 17% of nuns actually identify as atheists. The huge majority, we're talking nearly 2/3, are these nothing in particulars. They just don't feel like they fit into any of the boxes for organized religion. This quote here really gets to the heart of it. It's from a young guy named Zach. He's a nun, right? But he still believes in a creator. He's the perfect example of so many people out there who hold on to their own personal spiritual beliefs, but they've just disconnected from the traditional religious institutions.
All right, so we kind of have a handle on who they are, but how fast has this group actually grown? Well, the data shows this absolutely dramatic rise all over the world, and it's happened in just 4 decades. Just take a look at this timeline. Back in 1981, only about 11% of the world was unaffiliated. But then, boom, by 1994, it jumps all the way to 27%. Now, a big reason for that spike was the inclusion of post-Soviet countries that had a history of state atheism. Then you see this dip in 2004, which makes sense. That reflects a bit of a religious revival in those same places after communism fell. But ever since then, it's been a steady climb right back up, hitting almost 26% by 2020. But, you know, this story isn't the same everywhere you look. And Europe? Wow. Europe is a really exceptional case. While the rest of the world saw big growth, Europe's share of nones nearly tripled in those 40 years. It went from around 10% to over 30%. It's now one of the most secular regions on the entire planet.
And this brings us to what I think is the most fascinating paradox in this whole story. Like we've been saying, being a nun doesn't mean you don't believe anything. It often just means you don't belong to a formal religion. And this split, this idea of belief without belonging, is creating 2 very different kinds of realities around the world.
So check out this contrast, because this is the key. In Europe, when people become nuns, it pretty much lines up with what we think of as classic secularism, a drop in both affiliation and belief. But then you look at a place like Latin America, and a totally different story is unfolding.
I mean, just look at these numbers. Uruguay, right? A country in a region that's always been seen as a Catholic stronghold, has over 61% non-affiliation. Colombia is getting close to 50%. Seriously, these are numbers you'd expect to see in, like, Scandinavia, not South America. But here's the kicker. This is the stunning twist. A big study found that 86% of these unaffiliated Latin Americans still believe in God or a higher power.
That is a massive, massive decoupling of personal faith from the institution of religion.
And this quote just nails it. For millions and millions of people, the cultural side, the personal side of faith, that all stays deeply important, even as their connection to the formal church just kind of fades away. It's like they're saying yes to God, but no thanks to organized religion.
So, where does that leave us? What's the big takeaway here? Well, this whole global shift, it's not a simple story about religion dying out. Not at all. It's a story about transformation, about fragmentation, and about faith becoming way more personal. So let's just recap the big points. First, the rise of the knowns is a huge global thing. Second, we got to remember they're not all atheists, not even close. It's an incredibly diverse group. And third, and this is the big one, belief itself often sticks around even when people leave the institutions behind. So the real story here isn't about the death of faith, it's about its radical transformation.
And that leaves us with a really big question, right? As more and more people find meaning and community and spirituality outside of the traditional structures, what does that mean for the future? What does faith in all its different forms even look like in a world where so many people choose none? It's a future that's still being written, and we're all watching it unfold.